you have been hanging around certain parts of YouTube, you may have stumbled across a particular deer girl popping up on your feed. Or maybe you saw the meme dance that has garnered millions of views already. And if you haven't seen it yet, you probably will now, as My Deer Friend Nokotan has made its debut, and I'm here to give my first impressions on whether it's something you might want to watch. You know, slice-of-life high school comedies with a unique twist already oversaturate the anime landscape, so My Dear Friend Nokotan is trying to penetrate a market with a huge amount of competition. But with Wit Studio, the company responsible for Attack on Titan, Spy Family, and Vinland Saga The Wheel, this anime might stand the chance. Or so I thought. While the marketing and trailer got me hooked enough to watch episode 1, I found the show to be underwhelming, which is not the word I want to use for a show that offers ample creative storytelling and animation opportunities. Before we go any further, let's quickly recap the plot. The premise of My Dear Friend Nokotan is pretty straightforward.
Good morning to you!
Turka Koshi is an honor student who desperately tries to uphold her perfect girl persona at school and keep her delinquent past a secret from all the other students. But her image is put in jeopardy when a dear girl named Shikanoko suddenly shows up in her life and drags Koshi into all kinds of bizarre antics. That sounds pretty workable. A show that can provide plenty of absurd humor while potentially exploring the idea of being true to oneself and learn to become a better person instead of just pretending to be one. But as I said, My Dear Friend Nokotan has an uphill battle ahead of it, simply because there's so much competition out there. When I examine a show and try to measure its quality, I often look at the competitors to see what they managed to achieve, whether it's animation quality, cinematography, writing, comedy, or simply creativity. And when you do that, the weakness of Nokotan becomes more and more apparent. Compared to high school comedies like Daily Life of High School Boys, Kaguya-sama Love is War,
You really are quite cute.
Asobi Asobase, Nichijou,
1, 2, 3, 4, fire!
and The Disastrous Life of Saiki K,
My meteor spark genocide ball!
Nokotan feels like it's actually holding back, which is a strange thing to say when you have 3D deers popping around and drool animation like this. But if you look past the pop culture and anime references and the 3D deers, you might find yourself left with a pretty hollow show, which again I don't expect from Wit Studios. But let's take a closer look. Have you seen those never let them predict your next move memes? That's what I think Nokotan manages to capture in its storytelling. While my previously mentioned shows tend to find humor in daily school life and exaggerate it, this one keeps misdirecting the viewer and taking the seemingly ordinary moments to some strange places, whether shifting genres, tone, or animation style. Naturally, these kinds of rapid shifts can significantly affect the pacing and often undermine the significance of what the audience is seeing. One of the first interactions between Koshi and Nokotan is filled with a barrage of jokes that aren't really given much time, so the joke becomes the quantity of things happening rather than the quality. One could argue that the shift in pacing is intentionally done to highlight the character dynamic between Koshi and Nokotan, with Koshi trying to maintain a regular and calm pace while Nokotan brings that chaotic gremlin energy into Koshi's life. I think this dynamic is one of the show's strongest parts, and I hope that the show continues to develop these characters in that direction. Koshi appears to desire not just to control her image, but the narrative itself. The first time the audience sees her is when she steps into the frame and greets them, revealing that she is aware that she's in an anime, and yet she continues to play the role she wants to play. It's like being a player character in a video game, but the only thing you want to do is be another NPC. Meanwhile, Shikanoko, or Nokotan, starts off by hanging on the telephone lines by her horns without knowing how she got there. My theory is that she was literally dropped into the anime and got tangled up there. You know, like she chose a bad spawn point or something. In fact, I feel like the show treats Nokotan as an intruder rather than a character, which I think is a very interesting concept. I found it amusing how many times through the episode Nokotan is either shown as dead or in peril without realizing it. It's like the show wants to get rid of her Final Destination style. Her horns getting in the way could even be seen as a metaphoric gesture of Nokotan not fitting into this world, or at least not in Koshi's life. Yet she brute forces her way in. That's why the scene of her smashing through the entrance of the classroom works both as a metaphoric gesture and a gag. As I mentioned before, Koshi and Nokotan both feel like player characters surrounded by NPCs. While the two have opposing views and personalities, it seems that they both are aware that they're in an anime.
Are we a comedy duo?
While the other characters are just NPCs with predetermined actions and responses. This is the most apparent when Nokotan smashes through the door and injures other students. Yet they still keep clapping because, well, that's the normal response when a new student enters the classroom.
She's such a funny girl, right?
Why is everyone welcoming her normally?
Am I the weird one here?
I'm going to find whoever did this.
Of course, I could be looking too deep into these gags. There might not be any hidden meta-narrative, and the background characters just act any way that the creators want them to. It's hard to tell from episode 1, but that's certainly what I felt like the show was trying to establish. Let's talk about the humor of the show, since it's the primary selling point after all. Now, humor is difficult to rate since we all have our taste in comedy, and what makes us laugh can be difficult to qualify. It will be up to you whether you enjoy these jokes or not, but I will still share my thoughts on the potential upsides and downsides of them. There are two primary types of jokes in this show. The first one is the straight man and the goofball antics between Koshi and Nokotan, where Nokotan keeps either foiling Koshi's plans, ropes her into doing things she doesn't want to do, or simply torments her through her goofy antics. Unlike Koshi, Nokotan doesn't take herself too seriously and enjoys a carefree life the way she feels naturally inclined to. More importantly, Nokotan seems to be a good judge of character, which is even visually presented by the horns glowing red when detecting someone's true nature. This also explains why Nokotan doesn't fall for Koshi's act and how the Deer Girl can take advantage of Koshi's persona to get what she wants.
You're also very smart, so you two should get a prize!
We might even get to nationals!
As I was watching the show, I began thinking that I was watching a high school anime equivalent of classic Looney Tunes. Both have a level of slapstick comedy, pop culture references, cartoon logic, and witty character back and forths. Nokotan and Koshi have this Bugs Bunny Daffy Duck kind of energy. Again, it's not a one-to-one equivalent, but it was interesting to observe this show from that perspective. Despite Nokotan's seemingly innocent, friendly, and gullible demeanor, she knows how to get out of trouble and outsmart others, a lot like Bugs Bunny. Just, anime. The second part of the show's humor is its reliance on the meta and pop culture. The show is heavily reliant on the viewer's knowledge of anime tropes and pop culture references to get a lot of the humor. Viewers without this knowledge may find some lines feel out of place or not as funny as the creators may have intended them to be.
She's an unmistakable tsundere.
Say what?
For example, in the intro, you have the girls falling out of the sky, referencing a common anime intro trope. But then we see it through, at least Koshi does. It's a bit of slapstick for those who are unfamiliar, but it's much more amusing for those who know the trope. Same goes for Dark Souls, JoJo, and Detective Conan references. It's a bold strategy that runs the risk of alienating some of the more casual viewers, but in exchange, they can garner a much more dedicated fan base who will meme the heck out of the show. If all that sounds like your type of humor, this show may be something for you. Jumping to animation next, animation for these types of comedies is crucial. I'd say it's one of, if not the most important thing. Since you are depicting something very ordinary and something all these shows are depicting, you have to bring your creative A game to stand out. Because of that, you can find some of the most unique and creative animations in this genre. Shonen comedies are typically a playground for animators to go crazy and really stretch their creative muscles. So I was curious to see how much Wit Studio can flex those muscles. And I'm not going to lie, there is a lot of quality put into the show. Everything looks crisp and professional. From the character design, animation, and cinematography. Where it seems to be lacking is in the creativity aspect.
You're kidding, right?
You have all these talented artists and animators, but they almost feel like they're being held back by something, unwilling to let go of their established professional techniques and do something visually crazy to match the craziness that the writing wants to achieve. I can't call it bad, because by all technical standards, it isn't. But I suppose I would call it uninspired. While the show plays around with different art styles and manages to mimic different genres, I found myself asking them to push that even further and exaggerate those moments even more. You watch that drooling scene or explosion scene in the trailer, and you can see that the production is not lacking in talent. But then you compare it with other shows, and you find that My Deer Friend Nokotan feels too static and boring, which is something I don't want to say about the creators of Attack on Titan. Again, I only saw the first episode, so they may still bring some energy later on, but after rewatching the first episode of Kaguya-sama Love is War, I could actually feel the difference in quality of animation and direction. The team behind Kaguya-sama knew exactly what they were doing and maximizing every single moment in that show. Whereas in My Deer Friend Nokotan, the animation seems a bit more static, more reserved. The punchlines are not as punchy as they think they are.
Still the first episode, you know?
Overall, My Deer Friend Nokotan shows promise as a fun, entertaining, lighthearted comedy with plenty of references and meta humor that should keep anime fans, gamers, and meme lords entertained. And while the show just started, I'm a little worried that there is simply too much competition in this genre for Nokotan to leave a lasting impression. The deer jokes may end up being overused, and the references may fall flat if not done properly. I highly doubt that Nokotan and Koshi will become an iconic comedy duo that say Pipimi and Pupuko are, but maybe they don't have to be. I think it will highly depend on what direction the show will take. Will it be pure comedy, a mix of actual high school drama, or will they take the story somewhere else entirely? Personally, I will keep an eye on this show for a couple more episodes to see if the rest of the characters and plot will hook me in. As of right now, I'd say it's an above average comedy anime, but it's a far cry from its competitors. But we will see if that continues. Thank you for watching. I hope you find this video useful. My chunky video is still in production, so I thought I'd make this little one. But I hope you still liked it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe. Oh yeah, and hit that notification bell. My upload schedule is so random that it really helps to have that on. Anyway, I'll see you around.
鹿の子の子の子